please. I am trying," Keisha whispered into the steering wheel as her whole body shook in the empty corner of the supermart parking lot, tears dropping onto her hands like they had been waiting all day to fall. Her little girl, Ava, was asleep in the back seat in a faded car seat, thumb still tucked in her mouth, and her son Malik sat beside her with his backpack on, watching his mama's shoulders move and pretending not to be scared. A cold wind slid through the small crack in the window, carrying the sound of carts banging together and cars pulling in and out, the whole normal world still moving while Keisha sat there feeling like her chest had a hole in it. 10 minutes earlier, she had stood at the checkout with a box of diapers, a gallon of milk, a small bag of rice, and one tiny chocolate bar she had promised Malik if he brought his spelling grade up, and she had watched the numbers climb on the screen like they were steps she could not reach. When her card got declined with that loud beep that made the whole line behind her sigh, the cashier had looked at her with tired eyes and said, "You want to try it again?" Like this was just some small mistake, but the third beep had felt like a slap, and then the manager had walked up with his arms crossed, like she was trouble. "Ma'am, you can't hold up the line like this," he had said while people stared. And when she had reached to put the chocolate back and keep just the diapers, he had sighed loud and said, "You know we got cameras, right? Don't try anything funny." She had left the cart right there, cheeks burning, kids in tow, and now here she was in the car, in her old Honda, with the cracked dashboard, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, not knowing that above her, a small black security camera pointed at that far corner of the lot was watching the whole thing, a cold little eye blinking red in the gray afternoon. "I can't do this anymore," she choked out, but she kept her voice low because she did not want to wake Ava or scare Malik, even though she knew he could hear every broken word and would remember this the way she still remembered the night her own. Mama had cried over the light bill. She thought about the stack of envelopes on her kitchen table back at their small Atlanta apartment, each one with red letters on it, each one another hand reaching into her almost empty pockets. Past due rent, shut-off notice for the power, a doctor bill from when Ava had that high fever and she had rushed her to the ER because that was the only place that would see them without cash up front. 2 weeks ago, the daycare where she worked had cut her hours, saying they didn't need as many staff in the afternoons, now that some parents were working from home. And the second job at the diner only covered gas and one small grocery trip like this one, if the card worked. "Mama, it's okay," Malik said softly from the back, his small voice trying to sound like a man and breaking her heart in a new way. "We still got cereal, right?" She wiped her face with the sleeve of her thin sweater, nodding even though the milk was in that cart inside and the cereal box at home was only holding crumbs. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, and she looked down to see a text from her landlord. "Need that rent tomorrow, or I have to file," and another from her boss at the diner, reminding her not to be late for the night shift. She closed her eyes and saw herself for a second the way the world probably saw her, a black single mom in an old car, crying in a parking lot because she could not pay for diapers. And she felt shame wash over her, so strong she almost wished she could vanish into the seat. Still, she did not know that somewhere inside the store, in a small room full of screens, a guard was watching her fall apart and feeling his own heart twist at the sight, in the back of the store, in a cramped little office that smelled like old coffee and printer ink. Ron, the night security guard, sat in front of a wall of monitors, one big screen split into 16 small boxes that showed every corner of the supermart lot. He was a big man in his 50s, with a soft middle and tired eyes. A man who had seen plenty of strange things on those screens over the years, from kids trying to sneak beer into backpacks, to couples arguing loud under the yellow lights. But this felt different from all that, and he could not look away. On camera 12, in the far left corner, where the old Honda sat, he had watched the young woman slam her car door and bury her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking so hard that even through the grainy picture he could tell. This was not some little thing you got over in 5 minutes. He had seen her inside earlier too, had watched the whole embarrassing show at Register 6 from another angle. Watched her card beep and beep, watched Mr. Peters, the store manager, step in with that sharp look he always used on people who looked like they might cause trouble. Watched her leave her cart behind like a dropped dream. Ron knew those looks. He had seen them on his own mama's face when she came home from cleaning offices all day, on his sister's face when they had turned her down for a loan she could have paid back. "Come on, man," Ron muttered under his breath, shaking his head as he replayed the footage, pausing on the moment the woman had reached to put the candy bar back, and Peters had still treated her like a thief. He glanced at the clock, knowing he was supposed to be doing his rounds, but something in his chest would not let him just switch feeds and move on. With a small sigh, he hit the button to save the last hour of footage from cameras 6 and 12. Not really sure why he was doing it, only knowing that the tight feeling in his chest was the same one he got when something was wrong, and he might have the power, even a little, to make it right back in the car. Keisha took 3 long breaths, the way the lady at the free clinic had taught her, trying to calm her heartbeat, then reached for her phone again, fingers shaking as she opened her banking app just to see the ugly truth one more time. The numbers on the screen were worse than she thought, a red minus sign next to a small amount that would not cover even a tank of gas, and she had to bite down on her lip to stop another sob from breaking loose. She thought of calling her mama, who lived 2 states away in Alabama with bad knees and a small Social Security check, but she could already hear the worry and shame in her voice, and she did not want to add her own pain to that pile. She thought of calling Malik's father, but he had vanished 3 years ago with the words, "I can't do this," tossed over his shoulder like trash, and she had blocked his last number anyway. For a second, a dark thought whispered at the edge of her mind. Something about just driving and driving until the gas ran out and letting the world go on without her. But then Ava made a small sound in her sleep, a soft little sigh, and Malik leaned forward to tuck the blanket around his sister's shoulder, and that thought died quick, shame and love teaming up to push it away. "We're gonna be okay," she said, forcing the words out like a promise, even though she had no idea how to keep it. "Mama, just need a minute?" She started the engine because the air in the car felt thick, but instead of pulling out, she just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at the big blue store sign and thinking of all the food sitting just on the other side of those walls. Food she could not reach. She did not notice the slim teenager with the pink braids sitting in an old sedan 2 spots over, phone in her hand, who had filmed part of the scene at the register earlier and now scrolled through the clip, frowning as she watched the manager talk to Keisha like she was less than human. That girl, Kayla, bit her lip, hesitated, then hit post and sent the video out into the small storm of her social media world with a simple caption, "Why they treat her like this though," not knowing how far it would fly. The next morning, after a night on her feet at the diner and only 3 hours of sleep, Keisha dragged herself out of bed, packed Malik's lunch with the last 2 slices of bread and a scoop of jelly she had scraped from the jar's edge, and then opened her phone to check the time, only to see her own face staring back at her from a video. For a moment her tired brain did not understand what she was seeing. It was like watching a movie of a stranger who looked too much like her, standing at that register, her kids behind her, shoulders stiff, while the manager frowned and pointed at the items on the belt. The sound was shaky, but you could hear enough. The beep of the declined card, the soft, "I'm sorry," from Keisha, the loud, "You know we got cameras," from Mr. Peters. The murmurs from the people in line, some annoyed, some uncomfortable. Under the video were hundreds of comments, more than she had ever seen on anything, most from people she did not know. "This broke my heart. Why they talk to her like that? Been there, sis. Somebody help her," instead of judging. Her chest tightened with a strange mix of shame and something else she could not name. something that felt a little like being seen, and a lot like standing naked in the middle of the street. Malik peeked over her shoulder and gasped. "Mama, that's you," he said, eyes wide, and she quickly locked the screen, hands shaking. "Don't worry about that," she said, voice sharp with fear. "Get your shoes on. We can't be late." On the bus to her morning job at the daycare, she kept her phone in her hand, the video sitting there like a live thing, and every few minutes she checked it again, watching the numbers climb, the little heart symbol jumping up, the comments piling in from people she had never met but who had opinions about her life now. At the same time, in the small back office at Supermart, Ron sat with his own phone glowing in his palm, eyes moving from the social media clip to the high-quality footage on his computer, his jaw set. He had seen the video when his youngest daughter sent it to the family group chat with a line of shocked emojis, not knowing that her daddy had been working the monitors when it happened. He had watched it twice, then logged into the system and pulled up his saved file again, comparing angles. Where the teenager's shaky clip showed mostly faces and tone, his feed showed the whole thing, from the moment Keisha had come in, counting crumpled bills twice before picking up the box of diapers, to the way she had tried to put items back when the card beeped and Mr. Peters had blocked her hand, to the long stare from the people in line as she gathered her kids and walked out. The company rulebook said he should send any saved clips only to his supervisor, but there was nothing in those pages about what to do when the person doing wrong wore a name tag that said manager. He thought about his own sister, who still struggled 3 states away with 2 kids and a paycheck that never stretched far enough, and he thought about Malik's scared little face on the screen, touching the side of the cart like he wanted to hide inside it. With a deep breath, Ron did something he had never done in 20 years on the job. He attached the full clip to an email not just to Mr. Peters, but to the district manager and the company's main customer service line, with a simple note: "This is not how we should treat people." Then, after a long moment of staring at the send button like it might explode, he clicked it, sat back, and whispered, "All right then. Let's see." The twist came a few hours later, when instead of a quiet order to delete the file, he got a call from a number he did not know, and a woman on the line said, "Hi, this is Channel 7 News. We saw your footage. We need to talk." By noon, Keisha's phone would not stop buzzing in her apron pocket as she wiped down tiny tables at the daycare, each vibration another stranger's reaction to a moment she wanted to forget. And finally, during her short break, she stepped outside near the dumpster to see what new mess had landed in her lap. Along with the growing sea of comments were 3 unread messages from unknown numbers. The first was from someone saying they could start a GoFundMe for her if she gave them permission. The second from a woman who ran a local mom group offering diapers and groceries. And the third from a reporter asking if she would be willing to do an interview about what had happened at the store. The idea of telling the whole city about the worst 15 minutes of her week made her stomach knot, but so did the thought of doing nothing while her name and face spun around without her side of the story. Her screen lit again as a new notification popped up. This one from the official Supermart account. "We are aware of a deeply troubling video from our Atlanta South location. We are investigating and will respond soon." Her heart banged against her ribs. They knew. Her mind leaped ahead, racing through a list of fears. They would claim she had tried to steal. People would say she was playing victim. Her boss at the diner would not like the attention and would cut her shifts. The landlord would see the video and assume she had money now. Then she thought of something else, something that surprised her. The faces in the comments who had said, "I've been there, and I see you, and you don't deserve this." She thought of Malik asking last week why grown-ups were always mad at people who were poor, like it was some kind of crime. Taking a shaky breath, she typed a short reply to the reporter. "I'll talk, but only if we talk about more than just me crying in a parking lot." That evening, long after the last shopper had left and the doors had locked, The supermart parking lot looked almost peaceful under the bright white lights. But inside the building, in the break room, that still smelled like burnt coffee. The air was tight and sharp. Mr. Peters sat stiff in a metal chair, collar buttoned too high, sweat shining on his pink forehead, while the district manager, a tall black woman named Denise, with tired eyes and a calm voice, replayed the full security footage on a laptop for the small group of staff packed in the room. Ron leaned against the wall near the back, arms crossed, trying to look neutral. But his heart thumped each time the scene moved forward, Keisha counting her money with care, the card beeping, Peter's hand blocking her from putting items back, his mouth forming the words, "We got cameras," like a threat instead of a simple fact. "You see any attempt to steal here?" Denise asked when the video ended, her eyes fixed on Peters. "She was holding up the line," he muttered, shifting in his seat. "We get people trying things all the time. I was just making sure she knew we were watching." Denise's lips thinned. "You embarrassed a struggling mother in front of a whole crowd over nothing," she said, voice still calm but now like steel. "And you threw around our cameras like a weapon, when they are supposed to be a tool for safety and truth. Not shame." She turned to Ron. "Thank you for sending this," she added, and he felt a strange mix of pride and fear. "We've had 3 other complaints about how customers of color are treated at this store," she went on, "and this video. This is the last straw. Mr. Peters, you're suspended without pay while we decide next steps." Gasps moved around the room like a wave. Ron closed his eyes for a second, thinking of Keisha in her car, and felt like, for once, the cameras had caught the right person. 2 days later, Keisha sat on the same parking lot where she had cried, this time in a folding chair under a small pop-up tent, a microphone clipped to her sweater. Bright camera lights in her face as a local news anchor asked, "Can you tell us what was going through your mind in that moment?" Her hands were sweaty, and she had wanted to throw up before it started, but now that she was in it, with Malik and Ava sitting just off to the side next to Ron and Denise, and a few women from the mom group, who had brought diapers and snacks and steady eyes, she found her voice steadier than she had expected. "I was thinking, how am I going to feed my kids?" she said, not dressing it up, not trying to sound brave, just honest. "I was thinking about how hard I work, and how no matter what, it still feels like I'm always one bill away from losing everything. And I was thinking how everybody in line was looking at me like I was less than them, when really I'm just tired." The reporter nodded, her own eyes shiny for a second, then asked, "What do you hope comes out of all this?" Keisha glanced back at Malik, who gave her a tiny nod like, "You got this, Mama," and she swallowed hard. "I don't want this to just be about me getting help," she said. "I'm thankful for the food, and the diapers, and all that. But there are a lot of mamas like me who don't end up on TV when their card gets declined. I want stores to train their people, to treat everybody with respect, even when the money's not there. I want folks to remember that if you see someone breaking down in a parking lot, that might be the bravest day of their life, 'cause they're still here." When the segment aired that night, the footage from the security camera and the teen's phone played side by side with Keisha's calm, tired, clear face, and something in the way she spoke cut through the noise of people's days and settled deep in their chests. In the weeks that followed, life did not magically turn into some soft, easy dream. The bills did not vanish. The car still made a weird sound when she turned left, and Malik still sometimes came home from school with a sad look that meant someone had teased him about the crying video. But things did start to shift in small, real ways that added up. The GoFundMe the stranger had started for her, which she had agreed to only after making sure it was not a scam, reached more money than she had ever seen in one place. Enough to pay off the rent she owed, catch up on the power bill, and put a little aside in a savings account with her name and her kids' names on it. Something she had once thought only other families had. Supermart, under pressure from the news story and a wave of angry emails, not only suspended Mr. Peters but also rolled out new training in every Atlanta area store about how to speak to customers with dignity, especially when money was tight. They also started a quiet program at Keisha's location where parents who could not pay for diapers or formula could ask for a small emergency pack at the customer service desk. No questions, no cameras. Denise called Keisha one afternoon and asked if she would be willing to come to a staff meeting and talk about her experience. And though the idea made her palms sweat, she went, standing in front of cashiers and stockers and managers in their red vests, telling them how it felt to stand in that line with everyone's eyes on her. Afterward, one young cashier came up and whispered, "I'm sorry. I've talked to people like you're a problem before. I won't do it again." And that apology, small and quiet, felt like something heavy tipping just a little toward right. A month later, Keisha sat at her small kitchen table, the same one where the stack of red-letter bills had once threatened to drown her, now holding a different kind of paper, a job offer. Denise had surprised her with it after a follow-up interview, explaining that the company was creating a new part-time role called Community Liaison, someone who would sit in on training, help shape new programs like the diaper packs, and keep in touch with local groups to make sure the store was giving real help instead of just talking about it once the news cameras were gone. "We need someone who knows what it's like on both sides," Denise had said, looking her in the eye, "and who's not scared to tell the truth. You already started this change without a job title. Might as well pay you for it." Keisha had laughed, a short, surprised sound, and then agreed, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and pride. The pay was not huge, but it was steady and came with a small discount, and most of all, it felt like a door opening that she had not even known was there on her first day in the new role. She walked through the parking lot toward the sliding glass doors, passing the spot where she had cried that day. She stopped for a second, looked up at the little black camera above, and gave it a small nod, like two old friends who had been through something big. Inside, she sat in on the morning meeting, listened to a trainer talk about seeing the whole person, then raised her hand and added, in her own simple words, what it had felt like when no one had done that for her. And she watched a few heads bow in real thought. When she came home that night, tired but standing a little taller, Malik ran to the door, waving a drawing he had made of their family, all three of them standing under a big blue sky, and for the first time in a long time, there was no dark cloud scribbled in the corner. One warm Saturday evening, months after the worst day in that parking lot, Keisha sat on the hood of her Honda with a fast food milkshake in her hand and Ava and Malik leaning against her sides, watching the sun go down over the supermart sign like it was any old sky, and not the roof over a place that had once seen her at her lowest. She had just finished another community meeting inside, this one where she had helped organize a drive to collect school supplies for parents who could not afford long lists in August, and as people left with bags of notebooks and crayons, several had stopped to squeeze her hand and say, "Thank you, girl. You don't even know how much this helps." Ron walked out, locking the doors for the night, and waved at them, his keys jangling, and she waved back, remembering how he had been the first one to see her as more than a problem on his screen. "Mama, that's the camera, right?" Malik asked, pointing up at the little black box on the corner of the roof, and she nodded, taking a slow sip of her drink. "That camera saw me when I thought nobody did," she said, more to herself than to him, "and then other people chose to really see me too." She thought about how scared she had been of that first clip on the internet, how sure she'd been that her shame would swallow her whole, and how instead, that one ugly moment had cracked something open, letting in help and change she had never believed she deserved. Life was still not easy. There were still months when the money felt tight, and nights when worry tried to creep back into her bed. But now she knew there were people around her who would not let her drown in silence, and she had learned, most of all, that her tears had not been weakness, but proof she was still fighting. as the parking lot lights blinked on one by one, and her kids laughed about something small and silly next to her. Keisha wrapped an arm around each of them, looked up at the dark little eye on the building that had once made her feel watched in all the wrong ways, and knew in her bones that the world only begins to heal when we stop turning away from someone else's breaking point and instead choose to see, to care, and to act. Because the moment we dare to look past our judgment and into another person's pain is the moment we remember that every single one of us is worth more than our worst day.